Put a little bit of the rub, nigga, I gotta be safe.
Let's get to the sports talk.
For the Spurs, and if this is finally the end for the Spurs after 2 decades of excellence, more than 2 decades, what does that look like? With DeMar DeRozan having a player option for next year, LaMarcus Aldridge has 1 more year left on his deal. Is there any movability for those guys? Is there any chance they move them? Do they just stick it out?
I think the Spurs, you see where they look, you see what they look like in a month.
Well, they never made trades in the season anyway.
No, they never had to. But this is a different day for this organization, and they can't abide by those principles or how they lived in a separate, parallel universe of the NBA because of the continuity they had. But this is a team. I mean, listen, go back to the summer, the Bertans trade where they traded Bertans to Washington to clear space to sign Marcus Morris.
It's a disaster. It's nothing short of a disaster. The way Bertans is playing in Washington. I mean, Bertans is taking 11 threes a game or per 36 minutes and making 47%.
Because the Knicks thought they tampered with Kristaps Porzingis.
This is like the first time that you'll ever see the Spurs have to rebuild. And they might have to. Like they let Bertans go to Washington to clear space for a player that didn't want to come over. He went to New York. They thought they had him. They did. But then he changed his mind and wanted to go there and play for New York. They move on from him. And then what they going to do with DeRozan and Marcus Aldridge, because that's their 2 main guys. Like, what they going to do with them? Because, you know, DeRozan, like they said, he have a player option. Like, do he want to try to opt out of it or stay with the Spurs? And Marcus Aldridge on his 1 year deal left, like with the team, but it's gonna be a time they might have to move on from Marcus Aldridge and just and go ahead and just rebuild. You know, they might have to. Cause they still got, you know, Walker, they still got Murray, they still got a young team. This ain't the same Spurs team. This Spurs team right here isn't that good like they used to be. This is not one of the good teams they had in a long time. And this season might be the season they might not make the playoff this year because they are struggling. Like everything is different in San Antonio now.
Came into a meeting with the Knicks, gave him 4 teams he wanted to be traded to. Spurs weren't one of them, but they were still mad at him for alleged tampering. So anyway, they've got to decide here what this is going to look like going forward. Of course, they could, you know, Aldridge, DeRozan. DeRozan's trickier to trade because if you're going to trade for him and give up anything of value, I assume you want to re-sign him to an extension. And I think
that he will find palatable, which is a lot.
It's a lot. They want a lot. I think LaMarcus Aldridge, the way Kyle Lowry is a little easier to trade because he's got the 1 year left on his deal. But you're not getting franchise-changing assets back for them. But listen, this rebuild is coming in San Antonio, whether it's at this trade deadline, whether it's the summer, and there's no getting around it. And it's going to be a hard road for them. They're not set up to turn this around very quickly.
Well, you just said the R word, rebuild. And I think if there's a blessing in disguise to the Spurs being 9-15 or whatever they are, is that Lonnie Walker's starting to...
So, I mean, Lonnie Walker's starting to come into his own, and Murray just still trying to find his way because he been out for a year. You know, build around them 2. You know, build a team around them. Put the right players around them to be able to have this team get back to the top like they once was. You know, I think keep DeRozan there and build with them 3. And put some players around them to be able to get the Spurs back one of the best teams in the West. But you might have to go rebuild mode. You know, because ain't nothing turning around right now. The season, how the season going and how it's going to look, what they want to do with this team. Like, do they just want to go back and just, you know, rebuild? Because how this team turned out this season, that might have to be something they do. This is the first time you ever see them have to do that.
get minutes and look pretty decent. Certainly explosive.
He's talented.
Court. And second of all, you can no longer be under the illusion that you need to add pieces to this veteran team by trading out of your young players and picks to get more veterans for DeMar and LaMarcus. You can't go that way. The team isn't good enough. That core isn't good enough. So they've got some clarity in that sense.
Yeah, and you mentioned it with a couple of the other guys too, Zach. The expiring contracts that in other years have great value. This year, because we have such, especially compared to last year, we may never have another free agent class like that in depth. This is not a good free agent class this summer, so you don't have teams chasing around cap space by wanting to get expirings in to create space. The teams who have space this summer, the Atlantas, the Memphises, the Cleveland, they're rebuilding teams, and they're not signing these expensive veteran players. They may get in the restricted free agent market, some of them, or bringing guys on 1 or 2 year deals. And I do think that clogs up this trade market a little bit. Like, look at Atlanta. They've got 3 expiring deals: Alan Crabb, Chandler Parsons, and
Evan Turner.
And those aren't necessarily players that, if I'm a contender, like, they come in and help me win. So that makes it even harder as expirings to move them. I do think that...
I feel like from Evan Turner could help a contender team out. He could give them a spark, off the bench or something. Now, I feel like he could help a contender team out where he could bring to him, because he is a good defender. He could bring something to the table. And Chandler Parsons, I don't know anyone go really even sign him because the history he have and injuries, and he really ain't even really playing with Atlanta. I don't think he even got into a game with Atlanta. So I don't know what they're going to do right there. What's the other person they said? It just like, what they going to do? That's all. Like, it's everything like what the Spurs going to do, because how this team that turned out this season
clogs up this market. One GM said to me, I think we're going to see some of the deals, maybe many of them, are going to be the guy that I don't really want anymore for the guy you don't really want anymore. Neither one of us love what we're getting, but positionally it might match up a little better for us. There's not a lot of big impact, playoff race changing talents that may move around in this one.
Well, and the Bradley Beal extension took a lot of the steam out of it early in the season.
We'd be on Bradley Beal watch every single day, but he can't be traded.
And a lot of the big fat contracts from 3 or 4 summers ago have gone. So those expirings for there are not as many teams that are in tax prison because of those contracts anymore.
Right, I just said it, right, that class of 2016, all those big agent commissions have been paid. Everybody's in the 4th year of those deals. Whiteside.
It's like, who would like to come to San Antonio and help this team get back to their glory days? Like, what players would attract some good players to be able to come to San Antonio and play for them? Like, when you thought you had Moores, you move on from a good shooter because you thought you was getting him when he backed out and went to New York. Like, what players can you get to come to San Antonio? What players will attract them and want them to come there? What can land them to come there and play with the Spurs?
Parsons, Evan Turner, Alan Crabb.
They're the expirings now.
Mozgov has gone off into the Biombo. And as those come off the books now, those are hard deals to move around anymore.
Well, we got a month or so to go.
Because Crabb was having a good year with Portland. Portland, they traded him to Brooklyn. He did a little stint there. They traded him to Atlanta. Like, he could bring something to the table as well. He's a shooter that teams need to space the floor.
Here 7 weeks, actually, so stick with us. But it's been good hashing out the early dynamics of the trade deadline with you. I guess we'll do one of these when people start actually getting traded.
Can't wait, Zach. Great stuff. Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For highlights and analysis, check out the ESPN